Hello everyone and welcome! Into today's mod spotlight, SLANEESH's decadent host, led by the favored Sun Prince Sigvald, will be facing off against the legions of Papa NURGLE. In this battle, Turin will be using the ultimate chaos mod and will be facing off the creator of the mod, Really Big Hammer. And now, without further ado, let's get naughty and nasty.
And now we are here for the final showdown between Sigvald's decadent host, who's going to be facing off against the pestilent forces of NURGLE. So let's go ahead and take a look at the army compositions, and we can go from there. So for my leadership, I do have Prince Sigvald Magnificent, and as you guys can see, there has been a SLANEESH steed modded into the game, and Prince Sigvald can indeed mount it, which is quite cool. So Sigvald also has some other abilities. He does have Ignore Pain, so a lot of the traditional abilities of the other SLANEESH lords. He has the Enrapturing, let's actually go ahead and pause it. He's trotting a little bit too fast for my liking, but he does have the Enrapturing Spasm, so he can debuff an enemy unit, making them unbreakable, but also heavily mitigating their attack and defensive capabilities. He has self-healing with Ecstasy of Slaughter, so when he's in melee, essentially he's going to be perpetually healing. So on top of that, he does have the other auras, the Enrapturous Pleasures, which buffs nearby troops with 12% weapon damage, armor piercing, leadership, all kinds of good stuff. So Sigvald's definitely quite strong, and obviously one of the weaknesses of Sigvald traditionally is that he's very slow. But I mean, man, if you could put Sigvald on a mount in multiplayer in traditional vanilla Warhammer, that would be awesome. But aside from that, in assistance with Sigvald, I do have a Champion of SLANEESH over here, which has some of those same auras that you saw, just on a smaller scale. And back in the back, I do have SLANEESH Caster. So essentially, it's the Chaos Sorcerer of Fire, but he does have the SLANEEsh ability. So he has the Bliss and Torment. So when he's in melee, he's going to be recharging faster than he normally would. I do have Delirious Excruciation, which is going to give them a huge negative ward save, but it also buffs them up and makes them unbreakable. It's pretty great. I do have the Ecstatic Seizures, which is going to send their unit into a seizure and lock them down. So I look forward to using that on the Great Unclean one. I do have a Hysterical Frenzy, which gives you buffs, but it also causes damage. That's kind of like one of the themes with the SLANEESH casters and SLANEESH magic in general. And I do have Slicing Shard. So SLANEESH hates it when his playthings run. The spell viciously punishes enemies who would flee the Dark Prince's games. So that's pretty much it for my leadership. In the front line, I have a bit of a combination of units. I have the Warriors of SLANEESH here on the far side, who don't have any really kind of unique things rather than just being kind of the rank and file of SLANEESH troops. Pretty high weapon strength, good stats all the way around, but they're going to be supported by the elite of the SLANEESH army. The SLANEESH is blessed. So these guys have incredibly high weapon strength, 40 weapon damage traditional with 26 armor piercing with 66 total, pretty much unbreakable leadership, and they also do have this intoxicating aura. So the aura is quite big, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I guess it's only 30 meters, but it does essentially slow all enemy units, which is quite cool. So the entire front line is going to be made up of the Warriors of SLANEESH, and the SLANEESH is blessed. I have two of the SLANEESH Chariots right here, which do have a nice anti-infantry bonus. I think it's like 15 or 20. Yeah, it's quite good. In the back, they're going to be flanked by the Demonettes. So the Demonettes of SLANEESH are very, very beastly. They have a lot of the traditional traits of demons with a ward save of 20. Usually the demons in this mod are between 20 and 30%. And then I do have immunity to vigor on these guys. So they're not living saints. They are just immune to vigor. They cause fear, and they're really good in the front line. I mean, they hit hard. They're not going to break. They do have an intoxicating aura as well, with the 15% speed debuff, so definitely get some good value out of these guys. In the flanks, I do have the Lancers of SLANEESH, which are, just the anti-large SLANEESH infantry, but that's one of the things that sets them apart from like NURGLE and Tzeentch and Khorne, is that they have a very, very strong anti-large option, whereas like a lot of the other factions have anti-large, but they're not like as mobile. Well, these guys aren't mobile, but they're not like as durable. Sometimes they'll have like low-tier cultists with halberds or things like that, but SLANEESH really, really does well with anti-large. So in the back, I do have some Knights of SLANEESH. They're going to be backed up by some Riders of SLANEESH, which are a hybrid kind of anti-large / javelin unit. So they have pretty good throwing attacks with 28 missile damage. And then they also have a very, very good weapon strength and an anti-large bonus. So these guys are definitely MVPs here. And what would a SLANEESH army be without the pulsating pleasure cannon? So you guys can see here, it's going to be manned by cultists. It's very phallic, as I mentioned in previous casts, but this thing is a beast. So when it hits someone, it essentially sends them into an intoxicated stupor. So it lowers their stats, their speed. It does make them unbreakable though, which is pretty funny because they're going to be exhilarated, but it does make them very vulnerable target. So in the far side, I do have the three Riders of SLANEESH going over here as well. And I guess in the time I was looking at that, they rode over there, which is pretty crazy. So 3 groups there and then 1 in the back. So guys, now it's time for the forces of Papa NURGLE. So in the front, NURGLE does have the Plague Bearers of NURGLE, which are awesome. Just look at this big badass NURGLE troll right here. So these guys have poison. They are demons, so they have a ward save of 20%. And they also do have a swarm of flies. So anyone nearby is going to get a lured melee attack. And they also have poison. So a lot of the NURGLE troops, aside from the low tier standard ones here, do have those poison attacks. So even the basic NURGLE troops do have a cloud of flies. And then they also do have a physical resistance of 25%. So whereas, SLANEESH is fast, NURGLE is going to be tanky. They have this. And guys, now it is time for the Great Unclean one. So this thing is pretty awesome, guys. It has a ton of abilities and it's just a monster. So ward save of 25%, 11,000 HP. It's very, very tough to kill. It causes fear and terror, of course. It has NURGLE's Rot. On top of that, it also has bloated with disease, so it's going to be perpetually healing. It's just a nightmare to kill. It does also have an upgraded Plague of Flies with +8, and then what is this? Putrescent Explosion. So the longer this thing fights, it's essentially going to be exploding periodically, and it just does this massive gaseous explosion, just ravaging everybody nearby. On top of that, the Great Unclean One does also have all the Nurgle magic. So he has Tide of Corruption, he has Rot, Glorious Rot, which is a massive kind of basically Fate of Buna effect on all nearby enemies. As you guys can see, it does cost an arm and a leg. So on top of that, he has Blades of Putrefaction, basically imbue poison, Bloated with Disease, which is a heal, and Stream of Corruption. So yeah, he's pretty scary, guys. So Nurgle also has Plague Cannons, which is going to be manned by these mutated kind of deformed cannoneers here. And in the back, he has, where are my favorite troops that Nurgle has? He has the Plague Reapers somewhere. Here they are, the Plague Reapers of Nurgle. These are by far the coolest looking units. These guys, man, they're just, I love the scythe. I love the green kind of texturing on the armor. It's got to be one of the coolest things about these guys. So if we look at their stats, they do have a 36 weapon strength, which isn't the highest, but they have a great bonus versus large at 15. Poison, just good combat stats, and of course having physical resist. So where their stats might not be as high as a lot of the Slaanesh or Khorne troops, they have this really massive physical resist, and they also have poison to drag people down. On the far side, he has more Plague Reapers, so he has a lot of anti-large here. It's going to be tough. Then he also does have a Champion of Nurgle. So the Champion of Nurgle has Swarm of Flies. It also has the Putrescent Explosion and Regeneration, if I'm not mistaken. Or Swarm of Flies. No, it has Swarm of Flies, Nurgle's Rot, and then also Regeneration. So my apologies for the long-winded introduction. It's been a while since we've seen the new Nurgle troops, but guys, let the games begin. So on the far side, you can see I'm getting my taking advantage of my Slaanesh speed. So I'm getting these guys around here, and I'm trying to throw some javelins into these Plague Reapers, which are his most high-value, powerful troop. Granted, he does have healing capability, so little harass like this isn't as good against Nurgle, but nonetheless, it should do well. You can see the Pulsating Pleasure Cannon is also taking some shots in here, and I'm just going to keep peppering these guys down, just working them down as much as I possibly can. And at the same time, I'm going to be getting my Riders of Slaanesh, and he does have this vulnerable Plague Cannon here, so I get a great charge in here, and I just absolutely skewer these peasants here who are manning, well, I don't even know what you would call these guys, but these servants of Nurgle, we shall say. So the Riders of Slaanesh get in there, do a little bit of damage, disrupt that fire, but nothing terribly devastating, but if anything, it's going to set them back for a moment. So he does retaliate by sending his Knights of Nurgle, as well as some of his Warriors of Nurgle to kind of intercept, and you guys can see the frontline engagement is about to begin. So over here, the Slaanesh is blessed, and the Warriors of Slaanesh are going to get in here, but they are taking a ton of fire from those Plague Cannons, so that's going to be really tough. But the Warriors have engaged in the front line. You can see they're running in here against some of these Nurgle Cav, and you can also see the Slaanesh blessed. Man, I really love the way that they use the Forsaken texturing here. So they're going to jump in here and start, tearing these guys apart. The Knights of Nurgle are pretty heavily armored, but nonetheless, the Blessed are very, very tough infantry. You can also see the Chariots coming in pretty hot and heavy in the front line, sending some of those Plague Reapers back to the Shadow Realm, or the Warp, we should probably say. But nonetheless, these guys do have an anti-large bonus, physical resist. They're very, very sturdy. So after they keep fighting here for a moment, they're probably going to be able to kind of beat back these Chariots and do some really good damage to those guys. So I decided to kind of support them with some Warriors of Slaanesh here. But guys, I know what you guys all want to see. You guys want to see the Great Unclean One. So the Great Unclean One has engaged here. It's fighting against some of my Slaanesh Blessed, as well as one of my Demonettes, and it is just tearing into my front line. And it's going to be fighting with some of these Plague Reapers, or these Plague Bearers of Nurgle, and this is just such a durable front line. That's the one thing about Nurgle. If you let them suck you into this like main attritious kind of grinding frontline fight, you can fight with them, but they're just going to wear you down through pure attrition. So you can see the Slaanesh Blessed and the Slaanesh Warriors are here fighting in the front line, and the Blessed will win against the Plague Reapers in a straight up fight, because the Plague Reapers are more of like a hybrid frontline, anti-large type unit, but nonetheless, it's still going to be a very attritious fight. But with the Great Unclean One here just ravaging this front line, my Demonettes are definitely going to get taken apart, and those Plague Cannons in the back doing a very, very good job. So things are looking pretty grim. But in the back line, you can see I did get some of my Riders of Slaanesh. He tried to get some fancy poison flanking on me, but thankfully I was able to get my Riders as well as some of my Knights here to kind of just ride these hounds down. So all is well in the land. The Pleasure Cannons are going to continue delivering pleasure across the lands. So over here, my Slaanesh Chariots have just been eradicated by those Plague Cannons in the back, but my Blessed are holding up okay. You can see that these Plague Reapers are actually doing better than I thought they would. And also, his Champion of Nurgle in here is doing some great work, just cutting apart. So he just has really powerful leadership and just is so darn sturdy. Like, I was having trouble really cracking through his front lines. But regardless, let's go ahead and take a look and find the mighty Prince Sigvald. So the Plague Reaper's in the middle, and you can see that's the Putrescent Explosion right there. But nonetheless, my Cav are doing a good job. They haven't racked up a ton of kills, but they are working down the HP of these guys, and I did get through to the back line. So you can see the Riders of Slaanesh taking advantage of their mobility is going to be getting in here and just massacring these Plague Cannons. So right now, these servants of Nurgle are just going to get absolutely lanced by all these mad nipple rings and all kinds of good stuff. So that's something that's pretty cool about these Slaanesh forces in this mod, is they all have that aura that's slow. So if you're going to be compromising the back line, it's really tough for the people to get back and defend their back line, because their frontline troops are going to be so heavily slowed. It's pretty neat. So the Chaos Lord of Nurgle over here is doing a pretty good job fighting as well. He is on a mount, pretty low on kills nonetheless, but still he's been having a good presence. You can see the Pleasure Cannon. I wonder if that intoxicates my own troops. If it does, that would probably be pretty bad, because I think I've been hitting my own troops for most of this fight. But the Chaos Lord in here fighting as well, and Prince Sigvald. So you guys probably want to see him in action. So Sigvald is trying to take out this Great Unclean One. This is just such an uphill battle. I mean, this Greater Demon is such a monster. And, you know, SLANEESH has the Demonettes and different things like that, but Khorne has, you know, the Bloodthirster. NURGLE has the Great Unclean One, and then Tzeentch has, you know, the Lords of Change. But SLANEESH doesn't really have a Greater Demon like that. We do have the Demonettes, but still, I mean, it's hard to deal with this Great Unclean One for sure. I mean, Sigvald was fighting it for so long and wasn't able to really do much damage at all. But regardless, the Blessed here are doing a pretty good job kind of working down these Plague Bearers in the front line. And of course, I do have some Knights in here doing some okay work, but a lot of my troops are routing off. So if we take a look here, you can see my Warriors of SLANEESH, 63 models routed here. Here we have my Warriors, 51 routed there. I have 1 Chariot left. Thankfully, I do have the back line. I have some healthy Knights of SLANEESH, as well as some Lancers back there. So even if I do lose this frontline engagement, I'm going to be able to kind of, you know, have a bit of a rally. And you can see my opponent over here, Steelblade, the creator of the mod, is going to be using that Putrescent Explosion. I think he hit some of his own troops, but you can see that it's coming from the Great Unclean One. It's just tearing through these troops with rot and decay, just massacring them. But you can see in the back, I do get a pretty good timing engagement here with my Riders of SLANEESH, who are going to be slamming into the back of these NURGLE forces. But the Riders of SLANEESH aren't really good against armor. They're more like great against beasts. So if my opponent was able to, you know, not able to, but if he decided to send the Great Unclean One back by itself and I was able to isolate it, that's where these guys would really shine. But in sustained combat, I'm not going to be able to hang with NURGLE. Over here you can see Bloated with Disease has been popped on the Great Unclean One. It not only exudes this aura of kind of pestilence, but it also does heal him. So you can see my Champion of SLANEESH here, or I think it's a Champion of SLANEESH, yes that is, trying to fight the Great Unclean One, but guys, his weapon strength isn't that high. So the Great Unclean One is more of like an attrition style demon. He's not like a Bloodthirster who has 600 or 700 weapon strength, but still he is much harder to kill than Bloodthirster. So he's working on that champion, and she's doing her best to kind of fight that guy. But you can see a lot of my forces are starting to rout in the front line. The Warriors of NURGLE are kind of pushing me back. I'm getting some reinforcements and a good kind of sandwiching here, but over here you can see the pulsating pleasure cannon hitting my own troops yet again and stupefying them. So the one thing about these guys is I found that they're better for single targets. If you guys look at the pleasure cannons, they have like just only like 2 or 3 kills apiece, but I think they're more designed for like the debuff. They didn't do a ton of damage, and that was something, if I had known that, I probably would have only gotten 1. But nonetheless, with their shooting in here, the Warriors of NURGLE are just, you know, holding strong. You can see my Chariots taking a beating. My Riders in here are fighting. My Lancers were forced into melee combat, and that is not a good situation. And here, a lot of my troops, you know, though they're fighting the good fight, they're starting to get worn down by this NURGLE attrition. And the Plague Reapers, or the Plague Bearers of NURGLE, the demons, aren't going to break. They're going to crumble like traditional, you know, undead units would in vanilla Warhammer. But still, man, look at that guy just tearing through those Riders, just sending them back. So right now, I had to pretty much do a full retreat. That one attack there just did some massive damage. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what I have left in the front line. So pretty much nothing. I just have my Riders. Most of my infantry have succumbed to the plague and have decayed and rotted and melted with NURGLE's afflictions. And over here, Sigvald is, you know, he's doing his best to kind of hold it down, but even Sigvald is getting horribly beaten right now. He needs to get out of there. He's low. Thankfully, he still does have quite a bit of you know, healing to do before his healing cap. You can see another Vile Tide coming into the back, kind of messing up some of my Lancers. And over here on the backside of the battle, or I should say the eastern side of the battlefield, the Plague Reapers of NURGLE are fighting against some of these Warriors of SLANEESH, and it is not looking good for the Warriors of SLANEESH. They're definitely getting outclassed in terms of infantry, but you would expect that, because NURGLE is a very, like, infantry focused. They don't have mobility, really. They're just very, very tanky and slow, so I definitely should have, like, kited them out a little bit more, done some cycle charging, and really been aggressive in that respect. But regardless, the infantry here, these poor SLANEESH warriors are trying their best to, you know, fight against these Plague Reapers, but the Plague Reapers with their poison are just, you know, just massacring them. I mean, they have 48 melee attack to the 37, and then they also have higher melee defense and poison on top of that. So over here we do have another battle going on. So this Champion of NURGLE is fighting against my Lancers, but it looks like these Plague Reapers have also won on the flank. So they're coming in hot in the middle, and he has a lot of troops that are going to be unifying right now. As far as my infantry, I just have this, I have my SLANEESH caster, but the Great Unclean One is marching forth. So basically all of the SLANEESH forces here, the Blessed and my Demon, I think my Demonettes are still fighting. And yeah, you can see the Pleasure Cannon coming in and taking out some of those Plague Reapers in the back line. But I still do have my Demonettes fighting. There's actually 23 of them, and they've racked up a lot of kills, 111. So the Demonettes are really, really MVPs, and man, I definitely wish I had brought some more of these guys. But my opponent is, you can see this NURGLE troops are taking spears to the face, and I also do get some of my Knights who were kind of in reserve in the back line playing defensive, coming up to the front to help out with some of this, you know, heavy-duty engagement. But the NURGLE forces are just this pocket of just destruction, just marching forward, and the Great Unclean One did get isolated a little bit, so I did have some of my Riders of SLANEESH coming in to try and jump this guy because I needed to drag him down. So you can see he does get hit with the Pleasure Cannon, which gives him 100 leadership, makes him unbreakable. which doesn't really matter for demons, but I guess he won't crumble. But he's basically immobilized. So if we look here, let's actually go ahead and pause for a moment, and we can see, let's go ahead and get on the tooltip. So he is intoxicated. So his speed is slowed by 70%, guys. So he's not going to be able to really move much, and he's getting lanced hard. Look at his HP going down to these riders. So, kudos to the creator of the mod, Steel Blade, also known as Really Big Hammer on his YouTube channel. He did a really good job bouncing these demons. I mean, in the original mod, they were almost impossible to kill, but now, like, a single group of these riders, which are very cheap, I mean, these are basically skirmisher cap, are able to, in the right situation, really take down this Great Unclean One. So nonetheless, he's still going to win, but the fact that they're able to do, like, a decent amount of HP damage against him is great. So the Chaos Lord of NURGLE does come over here to kind of help the Great Unclean One. He's going to get a good rear charge here, but I do have some troops, some Lancers coming back with their anti-large bonus. They're going to do great, not only against the Chaos Lord, but also against his Great Unclean One. But he is taking apart these troops. I mean, he costs a lot, guys. He costs, like, I think, like 8,000 or 9,000 gold, and he's fighting a unit that costs 700. So if you want to, like, talk about balancing here, of course, a Great Unclean One is going to massacre these guys, but we were able to take him down about 1,000 HP, which is really nice. And he did cast Bloated with Disease on himself, which also gives him a ward save, but he is at his healing cap, unfortunately, for my opponent. So right now, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at the battlefield. You can see my Demonettes and some of my Knights of SLANEESH are continuing to fight as the pulsating pleasure cannons just do their thing and work these guys down, but still, there's just this tide of green nastiness fighting right here. And these are all Plague Reapers for the most part, who have excellent anti-large, and I can't really get away because of the poison. So my guys are poisoned, they're just being dragged down, and you can see they're definitely going back to, well, I guess they're not technically demons, so I don't think they would go to the warp quite yet. So this Great Unclean One over here is trying to get Prince Sigvald, so you can see Sigvald's having to scurry, and thankfully he does have that SLANEESH steed now. So the Great Unclean One is also quite quick. He does have a, well, what's the move speed on this thing? So let's go ahead and pause, take a look. So the Great Unclean One, it's actually slowed right now, I think. It's poisoned or something. Oh no, it's Sigvald's aura, I was looking, so he does have the Aura of SLANEESH, the Allure of SLANEESH, which lowers his speed by 25%. So he's actually much slower right now. He's waddling, doing his best to try and catch Sigvald, but I do have the pleasure cannons back here, and he is very exposed. So if I'm able to kind of regroup my forces and get some sort of a surround on him, I think I might be able to kill this Great Unclean One. In the back, I do have Lancers. I do also have another group of full 79 Lancers of SLANEESH who I had kept an auxiliary who are going to be able to come and help out. But in the front, it's pretty much been, though it was very atrocious. I mean, all of the NURGLE troops are almost dead. If you look, there's 49 here, 24 here, but they're all within like 20-25% of their HP. So it wasn't a complete massacre. Granted, he has a very tough pocket for me to kill. And also this Great Unclean One is just going to be so tough. So I get my riders right here and I jump on his Chaos Lord trying to like slow him down. And in the meantime, I'm just continuing to pound this guy with the intoxication. So you can see he's getting, I think he was getting hit with the pulsating pleasure cannon, which was slowing him down. But I get the riders and then my Lancers are coming in pretty hot and heavy. So once they're able to get on this Greater Demon, I think we should be able to kill him, especially with Prince Sigvald. So Sigvald right here is kind of working on this Chaos Lord of NURGLE, but the Chaos Lord of NURGLE is, he's almost at his healing cap. He's starting to get taken down. All these anti-large troops are really adding up against him, and his leadership is pretty low. It's actually at like 21. I cast the Enrapturing Spasm, so he's unbreakable technically, but his stats are going to get tanked. So definitely some fancy SLANEESH magic going on right now, but Prince Sigvald is shaken. He's incredibly low. He has 500 HP, and I do not know how he's going to get away there. So I do have these guys marching a little bit slower than I would like. I was intoxicating my own troops. Oh, that is not good. I was wondering why they were so slow. They were actually taking damage. But I think the rest of the NURGLE troops in the front are also getting intoxicated. So they're having a little bit of trouble getting back. But you can see some of my auxiliary troop, these Lancers, have engaged against these Plague Reapers and are all, they actually have the support of some warriors here too. So it's a pretty good back and forth trade there. And you can see those NURGLE troops back here are actually getting beaten down by some of my warriors of SLANEESH. So a very back and forth fight. Though you guys can see the balance of power is very heavily in the favor of NURGLE. It is, it's not over till it's over, guys. So these Lancers are getting in here. I do have my Riders, and hopefully this anti-large is going to be enough to bring down this Greater Demon. You can see him just tearing through these guys, just being an absolute menace. And the NURGLE Lord over here is going to be pushing through, trying to shut down that pulsating pleasure cannon, because I think he wants to get his Great Unclean One kind of free of that fire. So my troops here, it looks like they're actually broken due to army losses, which is pretty rough. So let's go ahead and fast forward a little bit, guys, because there is a period of kind of regrouping and different things like that. And you can see the pestilent explosion from the Great Unclean One. And if I'm not mistaken, I thought I had more troops left, but no, we weren't actually able to kill the Great Unclean One. You can see the pleasure cannons doing their best to kind of work these guys down. But Sigvald and his boys, they put up a good last stand here. But you can see the forces of SLANEESH were not able to take down the Great Unclean One. So I think I committed too many troops to the frontline engagement. I think the way to really beat NURGLE is to really just send in like small pockets and just send them in waves. So then the NURGLE troops aren't going to get as much value from their vile tides of corruption, from their putrescent explosions, different things like that. But that was a very close fight. I mean, you can see pretty much everything is pretty tattered here. So very well played to my opponent, the creator of the mod, Really Big Hammer. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that SLANEESH versus NURGLE battle. It was a blast. The pleasure cannons, I definitely would have just brought one. I think if I had had a little bit more, infantry density and things like that, we really would have like thrived and done well well for ourselves. And yeah, it was a really, really well played battle. So guys, hopefully you enjoyed that SLANEESH versus NURGLE battle. I'll definitely be doing some more Ultimate Chaos. So let me know in the comments below what you guys would like to see. Do you guys want to see Khorne versus NURGLE? I personally think that would be a really good battle now after the new balancing changes. So guys, thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed the content and have an excellent night.